Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnett Bain. Good moment. Good moment to you, Freeman.
It's always a good moment.
Good moment, listeners.
Yeah, I want to thank our sponsor.
Please do.
So this show is made possible by the generous support of our friends at Hierophant Publishing, Hampton Roads Publishing, and Insight Events USA. Their work with mind, body, and spirit in their publications and their events is extraordinary, and we are grateful that we're involved in having them in our community, and of course they support this show. So thanks to them.
So, I want to posit a point. The future is not going to be as predictable as it once was.
That's what you want to talk about today?
I do. Comment on that, Freeman. You have anything to say?
Well, things are definitely speeding up, and what happens, at least in my perspective, from my perspective, is that we are attached to our knowing. So we tend to repeat. We like to repeat the past, throw it forward, call it the future, so that we have a sense of control and it's predictable. But the world is moving fast, and so there's a whole new set of maybe skills and at least mindset to being effective going forward, from my perspective.
That's beautifully said. I think that I agree. As a matter of fact, I'll add to it. It seems to me that what looks like the world is moving fast may also be simply that the rapidity of our accelerated disintegration shows up in a way that looks like the world is moving fast, but we are increasingly becoming aware of our inability to calibrate the true nature of things out of our old patterns.
I'd love to get a little perspective on this from someone who has, in the past, predicted the future fairly accurately.
Hopefully in the present. So
I wonder what he has to say.
We're really delighted to welcome Dr. Fernando Flores to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Dr. Flores is a expert on how people work together to get things done. He was formerly trained as an engineer and a philosopher. He has quite an amazing personal story, which we will get to a little bit. But I'm going to save that for the body of the show. We're just going to brush past it and welcome Dr. Fernando Flores to Cutting Edge Consciousness. We're so glad to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
So one of the things that you did, which was quite remarkable way back when, is your background is in computers, and you predicted that the computer was going to be very, very prominent, and there were clues in the way operating systems functioned that were indications going forward. And today, much of what you anticipated is in fact reality.
Right.
So I want to start there and just give folks a little background. Yes.
Yep.
You were at Stanford, I believe, and this was a computer science
department
orientation, yeah?
Right.
And you saw things that, in fact, are true today.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing started with my being in Chile before. I was Minister of Finance and Economic of Chile when I was 29.
Minister of Finance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How old were you at that time? How old were you? You were at what age?
29.
29 years old and nationalizing industries. They must have loved you.
This was under Allende, correct?
Yeah, that's what Allende. But I did something before, because you don't have right to be minister at 29 and you don't accomplish other things before.
Yeah.
And what I did before, I was my concern about how to run big organizations and small organizations. Then I discovered that the whole secret was in human communication. Mm-hmm. That company were a network of what I will call communication. But that year, I didn't distinguish between information and communication. I used to talk about information communication like synonymous, and still people talk that way. But after a while, I came with the notion that really what make a difference is not information itself, is what produces human concern and human coordination. Then I begin to talk about concern, coordination, that's the way. And that's the reason when I came here to California in 1976. I arrived to Stanford after to be 3 years in prison, in political prison. I saw that was coming the revolution, that was not only an idea, that was the reality, that computers are going to be interconnected, machines are going to be communication, connection machines, and what really was important is going to happen to humans there. And then in my doctoral work that I did in Berkeley in philosophy, that really it was about management. I said companies are not really information machines or buildings, really are network of commitment oriented to the service of the clients, and for that they need to be a coalition of forces for doing that. Need to have workers, need to have shareholders, but the more important is to have clients, and you need to serve clients. And I saw that the network is going to do that, and I begin to write about that and anticipate about that. And today you have all these things. You have Amazons, and you have Googles, and you have a Uber, the last story, no? And that each of them is revolutionizing the way that people work. And I said, yes, all has to do about how you organize network commitments in a different way than before, using the technology for doing that.
So there is a focus on the purity, the integrity of what is being communicated.
Yeah.
Some of which you outline. You outline this integrity in terms of the ability to make critical assessments. Yeah. And to receive them, as well as to make commitments and to live into them.
But for that, you need to make the distinctions that are some important. Like, for example, if I say that Obama is the president of the United States, I call that an assertion. It's something that really can be verified.
Yes.
But if you say, I promise to be at 10 o'clock available for my friends that are going to make an interview, like we agreed a long time ago.
Yes.
Well, that's different, because that's not information. That is a commitment for action. And yes. I believe that the whole network, suppose that I didn't arrive, well, part of your program will fail, you need to give excuses, you need to invent something else, and sometimes can have bad consequences.
Yes.
And that's what happens when an airline don't fulfill the promise to be on time or cancel a flight, can produce a lot of breakdowns. And then I begin to see that we human beings have this curious capacity to co-invent reality with other human beings. And we co-invent realities in something that are no assertion of truth or information, in timing commitments, like offers, like requests, like declarations, that is not going to go into detail and this that you want. And I said, that distinction needs to be worked. And I believe it's a big mistake to believe that what is happening in computer is information. Yeah, it sometimes happens that, but the more important part is they are tools to establish network commitments of different kinds. And take the phenomenon that happens when you buy something on Amazon. Mm-hmm. The catalogs that they have is really are offers for actions that they make to you. They don't call offer, and you don't need to call offer, but that's what they are. An offer is always a conditional promise that you make if the other guy accepted. And you accept it by punching the request. You say, I want this movie. And few minutes after you have a movie on your computer and you're watching the movie. And some of them are free, in Prime. And the important thing is that you can do this with millions of people simultaneously. Because that you cannot do without computers and without networks today. And that's why you have these giant companies have arisen now, and this amazing service that we are receiving, that they are so amazing that we are not more what I would say surprised, and we get used to, particularly the young people, but really they are amazing things what are happening today, and that produces a revolution in the world economy and in the local economy too. And now, if you are not part of that, sooner or later you are going to have problems. But the problem is not in the computer, really. It's in the new way of organizing life that is happening.
So I want to put this in the sort of context that we usually talk about in this show, which is the idea that we can create reality in terms of where we put our focus and to what degree we have a capacity, right, to hold a greater sense of possibility.
Yeah.
And from a sort of spiritual perspective, the language, first there was the word, right? First there was the word, and then out of that word, things started to manifest. Is, from my perspective, very much in alignment with what you're talking about. What I understand of what you're talking about is you recognized how networks bind together to create a result, and then often how they don't, where the breakdowns occur.
Right.
And it is with this word, right? The word. The word is what creates the reality. And a single word, one person's word, with another person's word, when it's intentional in the way I'm speaking
and aligned,
has tremendous power. Now, you've also delineated all the variables, the action and the receiving of the request and so forth. But I just want to be sure, because that's where I feel like you're really the perfect guest for the show, because that's a lot of what we talk about, right? So first of all, do I have that right?
Right. Yeah, you are right. I believe we need to enter more in the detail, because it did not look like magic. And I said, no, it's not. It's magic, but it's not magic at the same time, because every human being has the power to do that if they are aware of this story. And what happened is that we get so used in the everyday life, and we begin to forget that the whole thing is an invention that happened together, as an invention that we received from previous generations. Like, for example, take the phenomenon United States. And you said the United States of America. Well, that's basically the conversation that started in many years ago in Philadelphia. And that conversation has been expanded. And of course, people, when Jefferson acquired from the conversation with the French, Louisiana, and the Louisiana is all the cities around the Mississippi. And then you say, well, they double the country, and many of the things that we call now different Kansas and Kentucky and all that are coming with that conversation, and the thing continues expanding, and now you have this nation that go to Pacific to Atlantic that have acquired also by deals Florida, and each of these things are reformulation of language. And that are also, they were acts of domination, because you need to support that not only by agreement, by forces, and also the Indians suffered a lot with that reorganization. Then I say the capacity of making deals and the capacity of making declarations are ways that we reinvent realities all the time, and we create realities. Other realities have to do with the way that you make recurrence movement, like, for example, take the phenomenon of a piece of software like Google. What was the word Google? We never used that word before. Now we know that Google is a name that mathematicians were using for big numbers. But the important thing is now, Google is not only a name, it's a practice. It's something that allows you to navigate the network and find things and to have available for you. And Pisa and Berkeley, and I found 5 offers. You don't need to be looking what before were big catalogs and big pages full of names that you cannot find. They are now more easy. You Google, and Google begin to be a style of life of being with other people. And I said, the number of making distinctions, and from the distinction create practices and creating offers and requests. That's the whole thing in which life was invented. Now, always a little bit of mystery in the whole thing. Let me give you another example. I don't know, have you heard about dark matter and dark energy?
Dark matter and energy, yeah.
And dark energy, yeah. Well, that's are names for mysteries that have appeared recently. Always we believe that mysteries are something that no mystery are connected with knowledge at the same time. And then some years ago, astronomers begin to realize that there was an effect in watching the way that movement of galaxies happens, that they observe with instruments, that something doesn't work the way that we are working. And they say, well, need to be some amount of mass that we can observe. And then they invent the notion of dark matter. Dark matter is a matter that has gravitational effect, but it cannot be observed by instruments, by astronomy or X-rays or gravitational force. They are there. And then, what name we are going to put? They invent a name, dark matter. Matter that don't produce radiation or energy that can be measured. A few years ago, less than 10 years ago, they came with the same notion about dark energy. And now they have a consensus that is very mysterious. They said the matter that we observe is only 4%. The matter that is dark is another 26%. And now we have 30%. And what is the 70%? Well, sun effect called dark energy, because now we know that the galaxies are not decreasing in velocity, they are increasing and accelerate. That need to be another force. They put a name to that. You see, now we next generation begin to talk that is dark matter, is dark energy, but we forgot that really they are invented not like concept, like reality in a physical sense, but like concept for observation for human beings. That's our consensus for the way that our instrument and our way of distinguishes happen. And in the middle of what? On mystery too. And in my opinion, this is something that we need to respect. That we have knowledge on the one hand, but at the same time, we are an adventure in mystery. That's what we are.
I love it.
So, just to speak in and to inquire into the relationship that we have as human beings with mystery, as I listen to you, I realize that anything for me that is over the horizon of rationale, of logic, of reason, of storying, is mysterious. So I cannot explain it through logic, and yet I am beginning to have a relationship with...
Right, because it's the relation that we together have with that through language.
Exactly, but some of it feels even pre-verbal because I don't have any capacity to string the abstraction of language to something that is in itself preconceptual, and yet I have a relationship with it. It's right. Somatic. I feel it in my bones that something is drawing me to an intimacy with the more of what I can quantify, the more of what I can categorize in relationship. I can't define it. I can't make abstraction of it. It is something. It is a relationship with the more of my ability to be cognitive.
And then when we name it, though, then we pursue it in the name we give it.
Well, let's backtrack just a beat before, because to name something that it is a considerable mystery is we can't put a name to the mysterious. It is no longer mysterious. But it pulls us into the more of who we can be.
My idea of the metaphor is more like, suppose that we are people, European navigators, when they just discovered America and they just discovered how to navigate. Well, they put names to things that were mysterious to them.
Yes.
Some of them, that things were right, sometimes they were wrong, but they were, in every next generation, more able to navigate better.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the human condition. The human condition is we are never going to get the whole mystery. That's my opinion. But at the same time, we are navigating better, and we are coordinating between us better. And better means more one in relation with other. But in the middle, there are mistakes, and there are false ideas, and irrational. All of it part of the adventure, too.
So I have a question for you very quickly, and then we have to step out and take a commercial break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Fernando Flores. But first, this question. My visceral experience of mystery there's no logic here, is that I'm being drawn to it. There's some sort of, it has some sort of great power of attraction. And, you referred to the energetics of things that I believe we are beginning to enter as humans into a relationship with energetics that is outside of the purview of how we have held things before. So I wanted to just lay some of those musings in with you. We're going to return after a break, and then I invite you to comment.
Okay.
We'll be right back after these words.
Okay, very good.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Welcome back, listeners, to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Before the break, Fernando, I posited some propositions, and I'd love you to respond to them.
Yeah. Well, let us discuss one topic from history. It's always look history, because we can learn something, and from there we can extrapolate for the present. Look what happened in the 19th century. In the 19th century, like everyone else, they were a phenomenon called plagues. No,
yes.
The people died from things, and cities get mysterious and the whole that. And something happened in the 19th century. There was a guy called Pasteur in France that was a young chemist. That was really a school teacher, but he knows chemistry. And he discovered that these microorganisms that almost had not been observed before, they have been detected before, but they don't know what to do with that. They were what I will call the origins of this plague that we call today infections. So infection is a new word for shifting the interpretation that was before. And before was curses coming from God, coming from evil, whatever, and they were bad spirits that took cities and those things. And Pasteur said, no, these are really the presence of some microorganisms that have chemical consequence, and this chemical consequence has consequence on the bodies, and blah, 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 and took a long time, but finally he produced vaccines, and he produced hygienic practices that saved the life of many people and extend the life of people like us. Remember that up to the beginning of the 20th century, the average life of people was, the expectation of life was 47 years old in Europe and this country. And from there, from the accumulation of new practices that begin in the 19th century but extended in the 20th, that are hygienic practice, vaccine, and after antibiotics, now we are in the world of, we don't talk about plague anymore, we talk about infections. I said, then part of the mysterious disappear because now we have an interpretation that allows us to interact with it. And that's very good. Now, the big mistake is to believe that because we discovered part of the mystery, we have discovered the full mystery. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the full mystery, like we know, is that we live in a what I call a mysterious and wonderful world in which things, human being evolve with language and practices, but at the same time, we are in a bigger seat of mystery and interaction that we don't know, and for which I mean we have to have wonder and reverence. That would be my comment to your question.
Can we interact with mystery, with the unknowable, in the same way that artists interact with intuition?
Yeah, and with intuition.
That's all pre-verbal. There's no concept there. The concept is added in far, far down the line.
But they have the capacity to show something. No, that's the whole point. Is that they don't produce knowledge in the way that science produces, but they produce new capacity to see and feeling, and that is what we have. And I believe art has its own relation with reality that's different than science.
Can you speak more to that, the nature of art to reality? Because I see that cybernetics in general, computer life in general, is very, very close. The function of it is very closely aligned to the function of art.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been. I believe real science always has something like that. We need to distinguish between science like a human practice of discovery and revealing, and they believe in scientists like the real description of reality. That's the big mistake, my opinion. No, it's a very powerful interpretation of reality, like we move from plague to infection, but not something that we can say we are better because we are scientists now. No, we are different. That's what I would say.
And so the science, or the perspective of science as a response to mystery, was what replaced, let's call it superstition, right? So superstition was what you were talking about. We're going to make up a story that it's the curse of the gods and blah, blah, blah. And of course, that, from an evolutionary standpoint, that's a very sort of immature way to relate to mystery. The more mature way was science. And I don't know if I'm speaking for Barnett, but perhaps another way to relate is maybe art, to play with mystery, or an artistic perspective towards life. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I believe it could be art, and also could be some kind of religious practice, shamanism and other things.
Interesting.
They also, maybe they have some grasping of that we don't grasp other way.
So this is fascinating, because when we speak about shamanistic practice, that these are visceral intelligences that are valued certainly, if not more so, than equally with intellectual abstraction.
Right. And some of them are very repetitive. I know people, for example, in Brazil, that they produce magic healing by kind of way that we don't understand. But they work. They work for many people, repetitive there. And at the same time, they don't work ever. They don't work all the time. It's like real medicine.
What I hear you speaking to is, I hear you languaging the liminal. I mean, it is as though you're finding ways to. For us to become relational with, if you imagine a two-dimensional dot on a grain of pepper on your table, it's 2 dimensions. In 3 dimensions, as that lifts into 3 dimensions, that dot may lift to be a soccer ball, it may lift to be a weather balloon, it may be the size of the planet Jupiter in 3 dimensions, but in 2 dimensions it exists as a grain of pepper.
Right.
So this liminal state of not this, not that,
right.
You're speaking to the potentials of what is unknowable, and acknowledging that there is something emergent. There is always the possibility of the more.
Right, and something we need to distinguish between being sensitive to what is emerging and the difference between that and knowledge. I believe you can be sensitive without knowledge. And I believe
certain without knowing without certainty, you're saying.
Right, and without capacity to recurrent producing, but you can feel it, and I believe that, for example, musicians and poets have some of that capacity.
And it's possible that we can have multiple ways of relating without making them wrong. In other words, the shaman is relating to mystery in one way. The scientist in inquiry is going after it in a different way. And in the past, we felt like, at least in my experience, we felt like we had to choose one way or the other. And what's happening right now is there's a parallel interpretations that can exist simultaneously and sort of expand possibility for, and the artist, of course, has their parallel interpretation.
Some of these are greater or lesser slices of understanding, slices of perspective, greater and lesser pieces of the bandwidth. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I believe that we cannot limit ourselves to our present instruments and consensus for science today. They could be other in the future, and that's why I said we are. This is my belief, and I cannot prove, is that we are navigating in a world of mystery, but inside that we have recurrent procedures. We can make promise, and we need to be responsible. But inside that, there are also questions, and I have myself encountered with that phenomenon 2-3 times in my life that have been what I would call perplexing moment in which something is real and doesn't make sense to me with any rational explanation.
The what we started the show with and the way that I'm holding this conversation is that the future, what has not been uncovered or explored, is more compelling than repeating the past. So what we can learn, at least for, let's talk about the three men here having a conversation, right? We all organize around what can I go explore and what can I learn versus what can I reaffirm. And there is a propensity to like what we know, yeah? And yet we're willing to shelve that, you know, not entirely, like it's great that we know what we know, that's a jumping off point, but it's the exploration that becomes more exciting, which is equipping for what at least Barnett and I would surmise is the future is not going to be a replication of the past.
Not future, it's not present 2.0.
That's right.
Yeah, but it's true what you said, but at the same time, I believe that without trusting the recurrences of certain basic phenomena, we cannot prepare for the future. The future is mysterious and emerging, but it's not random. And I believe that we can be prepared for being good navigators in a world of uncertainty anyway.
So that is a prescription for resilience that I hear you speaking of, and I know that you're very, very well known as someone that goes into well known for large and powerful organizations in ways that you do almost interventions from time to time. I call them interventions. That it seems to me that in your use of with these groups of distinctions and assessments and requests, you are fast-tracking teams through a process that allows them very quickly to become very intimate with their own psychology and their own hidden agendas and their own story making, so that they can cease projecting their stuff on other people and be available for something emergent.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that every historical age has some shifting paradigm that appear very vaguely at the beginning, and I believe that today we need a new interpretation of language. I believe that language is not words, it's not the communication of transmission of message. That language is the dance of coordination between human beings.
The dance of, say that one more time, the dance of
coordination.
Coordination.
It's the coordination about coordination. That's the moment that language appears. And secondly, then if that's true, the more important skill for human beings, not knowledge, is more the skill of coordinations and sensibility to the different world.
That is that's more apparent than ever before when we have full access to all knowledge one click away.
That's the Google. You can Google it, and so it used to be that, you know, when I was a kid, we'd say that guy's an encyclopedia, meaning that guy's smart. Right. But really, that's just the ability to regurgitate information. Today, not so impressive.
Exactly. Google made obsolete that kind of skill. Like now, the navigation is with the other is more important, and that is in my opinion, the failure of medicine in this country is an example of that.
Say more.
You go to doctor and they treat you like a biochemical machine, and that's very useful for many purposes, no?
Just sort of an epiphenomenon of your biochemistry.
Right. But and you can be divided in more complicated system of that. But the real truth that the more important thing that a physician can do is to treat you like a human being. To listen like a person with concern, with possibilities, with relationships, with anguish, with a sign of finitude, and a good physician that treats you that way already going to heal you 50%. Mm-hmm. In my experience here, I do medicine in Chile and here, because depending on the country that I am sometimes. In Chile, still I have physicians that I can talk with them. They treat me like a human being. They know my story. They know my family, and they are good physicians. And here I go, and I am a guy that is being seen like a set of components. Some of them see me my gut. Some of them see my esophagus. Some of them see my chemistry. But at the end, no one asking me what is going on with me and what are my things. And I believe that there are enough today medical evidence to see that your neurocircuits are connected with your well-being, and they affect you, then a bad relation with the medical system can make you more sick than before, and vice versa. And I believe that today we don't have that social clarity, and there's a lot of suffering produced by the medical system.
What I love about this, again, this interweaving of parallel paths. So at one time, the way we related to mystery was with superstition and storytelling, and then we came the age of reason and the idea that we could, compartmentalize and reduce everything down to a mechanized worldview, which helped. I mean, it helped us navigate this sort of immaturity. And now what I hear you saying is the next wave has to be, at least from my perspective, maybe an integration where there's a new skill set that allows us to humanize and dimensionalize the perspective we're coming from.
A resilience.
Yeah.
Well, and a dimensional perspective that we can see it from multiple vantage points versus having one point of reference that we're going back to. That's where, everything is in this narrow bandwidth of logic and reason. That's not going to get the full story.
Yeah. Yeah, some people are talking about ecological integrity in the sense that we need to look at like things, not like material things. We need to be part of ecological system that is not only biological, it's also social and historical. And inside that, we deal with ourselves.
So to deal with ourselves, we deal with ourselves because we're not really in the game until we are dealing with our own baggage, until we're dealing with all the clutter that stands in the way of us being in the game.
Yeah, but part of the baggage is also our richness, no? It's we need to accept that we start from some place. I saw the other day an interpretation of a historian from England about the faces of that Rembrandt. I don't know if you see Rembrandt painting. And he saw what these people were, Dutch people in the 1680s. And he said, well, these people were very happy that they begin to be rich, but still they feel guilty about that. Huh? and they know that the thing was fragile. And I found genial. I said, that's what really these faces are. They are appearing out of the old world to enter to a new world, and they are insecure. They are not consumers. And I say, well, that's what that artist really grasped and made them genius. Because they don't show us a lot of painting. They show up a way of being that was manifested.
Do you see that today? Can you look out into the culture and see an analog?
Yeah, I believe that we are entering a culture in which the limit of the planet is beginning to appear all around. And I believe that the people call that global warming or climate shock, different story, and people's younger generation begin to listen more and more that this is coming, and no one is doing anything. But at the same time, there is a light of what I will call a hope here, because the fact that we share a planet, it means that we are the same species. And all our prejudice and boundaries and political things that were part of the globalization of the past centuries are obsolete. And I believe that a new kind of being, more responsibly, can emerge. And it's going to be a lot of messes, but at the same time, it's a new age coming. And I believe that some of the artists that are beginning to grasp that.
And I think it might, from my perspective, it might be that word integrity or the integration, if you will, that nothing is lost. All the parts of my past are valid and valuable, but the context has expanded to something that's more interdependent and more expansive in my own evolving.
Right.
Yeah. Look, we've hit the end of the show, or the end of the segment, I should say, not the end of the show.
But we want to invite you back.
Yeah, of course we do. We want to
Fernando,
get you in here.
If you're in Southern California, would you be open to coming in studio so we can sit you in this big leather chair here?
I pass many times through there because I take planes in Los Angeles to go to different places.
Fantastic.
Okay, then we're going to schedule that.
This has been an absolute gift for us. Before we let you go, is there a website or someplace you can send our audience to get more of your work?
Yeah, there's something called pluralisticnetwork.com.
Okay, we will put this up on the Cutting Edge Consciousness website as well, folks, so that you can get a hold of Fernando, you can view his work and learn more about this amazing man's perspective. Thank you so much, Fernando, for spending time with us today.
Thank you a lot, and good conversation.
All right.
It's been such a pleasure. Until next time, be well.
And for those of you listening, we invite you to stay tuned because Barnett and I will be back after these messages to wrap things up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain. We are good navigators in a world of uncertainty. I love
good
that.
is that?
Becoming good navigators in a world of uncertainty.
Yeah, that it is. Listening to him, it's like flying over at 50,000 feet and looking down. Somehow, I have a much more clarity in the light of that conversation about the textures and the intricacies that are going on, about the patterns that you can see from the high point of view. And it's about resilience, isn't it? Down on the ground,
well, and it's about a skill
chaotic.
set. It's the two, right? Resilience is a skill set.
The skill set
it's part of the skill
is
set.
resilience.
Yes.
The skill set is the ability to move with the forces and to respond to them as opposed to reacting out of our psychology. But you have to become intimate with your psychology and in order to supersede it.
We need the full breadth of our humanity. We need the full breadth.
Yeah.
Nothing.
It's a fuller breadth than we have been operating with.
And so each of us is responsible, in my mind,
100%,
for overcoming the narrowness of our programming and our self-identity. That is included in the experience, right? That comes along too. But if that's all we've got, it's not sufficient for where we're going. So what I heard Fernando saying, and hey, frankly, it's what we've been saying, but I mean, it's great that it's being confirmed, is that the breadth of who we are evolving into has to be big enough to hold not just what we've done and gone through and known and so forth, but also what we're learning and growing into. And the skill set required to navigate that uncertainty is what the show is about.
It's what this show is about.
Yeah.
But it's taken us some time to see the forest for the trees. So it is more clear to me now. The path that we've been walking, I can look back now and see a little bit of brush cleared. I look forward and it's still as dense and fogged in as ever. But I am more attuned to the skill set. I'm more confident in my resilience and my ability to respond to the uncertainty than before. No, it's not ultimate, but it's more confident than before, and I can see that I've covered some territory.
And as indicated by more moments of clearing.
More moments of
That's
clearing.
all I've got.
And an understanding that beyond responding out of my structured imagining, out of my psychology, out of my conditioning, out of my patterns, out of my scripts, out of my habituated behaviors, beyond responding out of that with a clarity of that so that I can expand beyond it, love it, not try and crush it, just love it so that I don't have to scratch that itch every time.
Yeah. Suddenly
I am available to meet a life that will not be met with strategies.
Right.
Life is a lot bigger than, there's strategies and then there's humanities. We're very good with strategies.
Right. So
then I can meet life that is operating in its own way, mysterious, and respond to that. That is for me, that is the cutting edge of consciousness.
Yeah.
That is the skill set.
And I like all the arenas. So for this to occur in something that is repetitive and sort of narrow would not be sufficient. So this show, of course, has a life of its own. You've written the book of Doing and Being, which is often running in a big way.
Yeah.
That has its own life. It's its own expression. You're starting a new film with Donald Sutherland.
2 weeks.
Yeah, The Milton Secret, which is, so I love the various expressions.
And it's all one thing.
It's all one thing. This is what I was trying to get to, is that, again, are you a filmmaker? Are you an author? Are you a radio personality?
And it can't be once upon a time, and it's not that far back, So I say once upon a time like it's ancient history. But for most of my life, I held life as a serial set of events. They were sequences. You were this, you were that, you did this.
A single word title.
Exactly.
What's your religion? I'm Catholic. What's your job? I'm a lawyer. Everything was give me one word that I can shoehorn everything into this narrow box.
Women are more attuned to the higher truth of this, I think, because certainly the women in my life, they are juggling all kinds of plates, spinning plates all over the place.
Multiple hats.
So you don't just show up as a job. They have extra jobs just in their jobs. They have the pressures of a patriarchal world. So they don't just show up for work. They show up. They have to look good. They have to have makeup. They have all kinds of things that men don't have. In addition to their job, they have to come home, raise the kids.
They're in that dance of coordination. So in a very human way.
Men, we don't have the same. I certainly don't have the same degree of. It's not multitasking. It is an integrity, an understanding of, there's a sense of a whole person that's just not as segmented. So they have a deeper connection with that higher truth of how life really is. I'm just starting to understand it because all of these things that have been seeded over many years, they all just seem now, my friendships and my relationships and yes, a book, a movie, those kinds of things, they all seem to, they're all at once. It's all one thing. Life is not a serial thing unless we push things away and unless we disconnect ourselves from its truer nature. Life is a martini. You just shake it up and pour it.
Well, and so look, if you sit down with a branding expert, for example, and I did this recently.
Yeah, they will pull you apart.
Yeah, they'll say, well, okay, how do we, what's your brand? What is the single thing we can define you as? What's the one story we can tell and repeat and repeat and repeat? And I have said to them, no, thank you.
You're a comprehensivist.
I'm not interested.
Like Bucky Fuller.
Yeah.
You don't want to be, there's a time for specialization. Yeah. That is a time of adolescence when you specialize. Yeah. When you have absolutes and you have guarantees. All things are, this music sucks. Right. If I wear those shoes, I'll be, you specialize. And then there is a time you begin to mature and you begin to not multitask, but you begin to express yourself.
Dimensionalize.
You dimensionalize. Exactly. That's the word. You express yourself and dimensionalize. You become more of who you are with conscious awareness in every aspect.
And I don't care if you can't define it. I really
if
don't.
You can define it, then you are not. Then you are not creating you're not cutting a new path.
That's
following someone
else.
That's
it. But that is unnerving for some folks. I mean, it really is. It's unnerving for me.
Hey, it's unnerving.
I sat down with this branding expert and left feeling bad, like I ought to figure out what my brand is. Of course I didn't.
The living of it is unnerving because it is chaotic. And now if we lay judgment on it, it becomes a dark chaos. It becomes a constrictive chaos. If we develop the kinds of relationship that Fernando Flores is referring to, then this is a skill set of resilience that allows that chaos to become a beautiful chaos. But the nature of life, folks, it's chaotic.
Well, I'm gonna be really bold. You and I chose lives that had some uncertainty. I mean, we chose various careers and various expressions
that allowed us to have no return.
we were in the bridge a long time ago. This came up like maybe 5 years ago when I was facing some financial issues, and Jasmine sat me down and said, okay, well, what job can you go out and get? And I went, I don't know. I've never had a job in my adult life.
I drove 7 limousines simultaneously, I couldn't pay the phone bill.
Exactly. But the point I'm trying to make is going back to this idea of being good navigators of a world of uncertainty. I'm just saying that you and I are practiced in this, right? And it wasn't so fun for a long time. Not that it's even fun today.
We're more practiced. I mean, it's like, I think of it as lobsters in a pot. So, this is hot, and then pretty soon you get used to it and you're backstroking around the pot, and then you turn up the jets and, whoa, it's getting hot in here, and you get used to it. So there is a relationship between how much chaos one can deal with before it is overwhelming and you go into inundation. And my experience of it, although at times I certainly did feel hysterical. But my experience is that your soul, your higher self, that the world is a loving place, and it meets you at the edge. It is almost like it's waiting for you at the edge of your possibility, and it is just enough. It's just enough to grow you. Just enough to grow you. It's not enough. It never comes at you with such inundation that it'll crush you. But it will take you out of, if you let it, it will take you out of the smallness, and it will grow you beyond your wildest dreams.
I said to you this morning when we were talking about your daughter, that she's all in, right?
100%.
Yeah, and she's all in her life, and I wonder where she got the courage. She burned those
boats at 10 years old.
I wonder where she got the courage to do that, and it's just what she saw.
She never saw anything else, so she doesn't know anything differently.
Yeah. There wasn't this, classic sort of lecture about, what are you going to do as a backup plan? Every time I told my family I wanted to be an actor and I wanted to do all these things, they're like, yeah, well, what's your backup plan? What from the short menu of one-word titles can you take on so that you fit? And it never materialized. I couldn't figure out a one-word title that I was willing to adopt, which made them very uncomfortable. And look, folks, it's uncomfortable. So I, Barnett, encourage you to mix it up a little and become a good navigator in a world of uncertainty. This
was a really fun show. And
before we end, folks, go out and get the book of Doing and Being, Barnett's book. It is out on newsstands. On bookstores.
Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for all of the fantastic reviews, and it is number one in multiple
new releases,
categories in new release.
Okay, so with that, we're going to say goodbye and come back again here to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.